Welcome. You're listening to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Mike McDowd. At each commercial break, we're going to ask a trivia question. Today's trivia theme, miscellaneous trivia. And a few things that we want to cover. We do have a guest who's going to be coming on in the next segment. The Celtics value sale, they're going to be Celtics sale valuation 6.1 billion sets a North American sports record. And I guess because of that, NBA teams are considering launching a European league, could generate an extra 3 billion in revenue. I know, Mike, you were mentioning about Stanford's coach, Troy Taylor.
He's gone. He's out of here.
Gone.
Yeah.
And of course, we got to talk a little bit about the death of George Foreman.
You know what happened is Andrew Luck is the new general manager at Stanford. Yeah. So what do? You know, Stanford, they don't like cow guys. They gave him the axe. Get it? Yeah. Joe probably doesn't know this, but the Cal Stanford game, they play for the famous axe. Well, yes. They gave Troy Taylor the axe after 2 consecutive seasons at 3-9. So what happens to him? I don't know, but breaking news out of Stanford.
Well, and apparently he got fired for bullying and belittling female athletes.
Well, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Mike. Okay. All right. All right. So, audience, you'll stay with us, please, because when we come back, we've got Joseph Cravens, former college basketball coach, quite a legend, right, Mike?
He's quite a legend. He just goes by Joe Cravens, and I'll tell you what, he's one of the all-time greatest, and we'll tell you why he is. And he's got on his shades in Southern California, and now he takes them off. And we're going to have, this is going to be a fun interview, and you're going to find out why. America, get ready.
All right, audience, stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back.
Yes, sir.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, along with Mike McDowd. Mike, who's our guest today?
Well, who's our guest today? That is the $1 million or $10 million question. He's not just any other guest. I consider him a friend. He's a one-of-a-kind guy. He's an MVP. He's an All-American, an All-Star, an all-around great human being. I had the pleasure of working with this gentleman. His name is Joe Cravens. He was a long-time head basketball coach, and we'll tell you where he coached. He coached at the University of Washington. He coached a year at the University of Utah as the head coach with Rick Majerus, when Majerus had to step down. And then he was a longtime coach for Weber State University. Joe and I had the pleasure of working the Big Sky basketball conference tournament in glorious Reno, Nevada, where we ate and drank and talked basketball. Joe, my friend, it is a pleasure and honor to have you on the show. I tell you what, it's a thrill. Welcome aboard.
Thanks, Mike. I noticed with all those very kind compliments and accolades, you didn't include he's a technical wizard as well, since it took me about
issues.
Well, thanks. That's very kind of you to say we're having technical issues. You didn't say I'm trying to get this stupid hillbilly on the call who doesn't know his backside from a video. But anyway, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on here with you.
Well, hey, Joe, you and I worked the Big Sky Conference tournament a few years ago on television. You had a blast. A little background about you. You were born in Scottsburg, Indiana, thus that great accent you have. And then, you went on to play basketball at your alma mater, which is, I guess it's University of Texas, Arlington. Is that correct?
University of Texas at Arlington, yes, Mike.
Yes,
right.
So, basketball's in your heart and soul. And, you've been doing this so long, and it's so great to have your perspective, because there's so many things we want to talk about. First of all, let's talk about your ascent to being to being a coach. I mean, being a basketball coach at the levels that you are at. First of all, you must have an amazing wife and family, because it is no easy task, is it?
No, it's not. And I was a college basketball coach for 30 years, and 17 of those was as I'm sorry, 12 of those was as a head coach, and then I coached for 5 years after that at which is a great banquet story, a very small a Catholic girls team, which I don't know that at that time I'd ever watched a women's team play, and ended up being a head coach there. But it's very hard. Coaching a Division I college coach is extremely. You're either all in or all out. There's no 1 foot in the boat and 1 foot out. And in this day and age, I think it's gotten about 10 times harder. And I use this line all the time. I'm so thankful that now I'm still part of the game, but as a broadcaster, and the great thing about being a broadcaster is I'm undefeated in 19 years of being a broadcaster, Mike. That's the great thing. You never get beat. You know, you watch a game and a good friend of yours is coaching and he gets beat by a last-second shot, and you think, oh, man, I feel bad for him. Okay, let's go get a beer and a sandwich, boys. So, you know, it is a whole different perspective from there. But I'm very thankful and very blessed that I'm still involved in college basketball.
So, Joe, let me ask you, because you were mentioning that it's so much harder now. Is it because of the pressure and the money?
Well, I think there's always been extraordinary pressure. I think it's very hard to make people understand the level of pressure and anxiety that goes along with that. And it's my wife is a cancer survivor, bless her heart, and you know, she has a connection with every other cancer survivor that she talks to, and I'm using that as an analogy because unless you have been sitting in that seat, walking in those shoes as a Division I coach, you'll never understand the day-to-day pressure and, again, anxiety that goes along with it. And, I mean, it is a constant every day, every week, every moment of your life almost. And it's I don't know that whether you're making $75,000 or $4 million really changes it, the level of stress involved. And now you add, you know, kids leaving by the transfer portal, the NIL, all the other things that have been added to that formula to make it even harder. Again, I'm glad for the 30 years I put in, but I'm glad I'm not a head coach right now.
So is that one of the main reasons why it's so much harder is because of all these rule changes with the kids and the college and the NIL and et cetera? Is that the main reason?
Well, I mean, think about it. There are no rules anymore. I mean, there's no cheating in college basketball anymore. I mean, it used to be, I love to tell the story when I was early in my coaching career at the University of Texas at Arlington. And at that time, you didn't have the 8 or 10 mega staffs that, you know, head of video and the assistant to the head of video. It was just me and the head coach, and I'm talking about back in the early 80s, and some guy gave my head coach and I a big stack of Burger King 2-for-1 coupons. And so we were dealing them out to our players, and one morning I came to the office, and the head coach said, boy, the athletic director wants to see us, and he's really upset. And he looked at me like, what'd you do? And I said, I have no idea. We went in the athletic director's office. I thought he was going to fire us for giving kids 2-for-1 Burger King coupons. You know, he said that's an added incentive. That's an extra benefit. And, you know, I tell coaches now, you can give a kid $1 million and buy him a new car. Don't give him any damn 2-for-1 burger coupons. It almost cost me my career. But
go ahead.
But think about it. You know, with the money with NIL. You know, one of the big rule violations and how guys got kicked out of coaching and all that where they were giving guys money or there is no rules anymore. I mean, now it's how much do you want? Yeah, we can pay that. We can't pay that. And, you know, there's no I had breakfast with a couple old coaches in Phoenix the other day when I was at spring training. We laughed about how in the summer we used to be recruiting a kid and go to a summer tournament and you'd wave at him. just a little kind of short wave and look around, hope no one saw you, because that was a violation. That'd be counted as a contact. So, I think that there's still great pressure to win. But now there's, you can't raise your voice to someone. You can't, kids come and go like there's a swinging door on your locker room, and then the NIL money is just taking it to a whole different level.
Hey, Joe, one thing I like to tell a story real quickly, but I was working at a junior college, and I'll just say it, Santa Rosa Junior College. I know you've heard of it. You probably know the head coach up there, Craig McMillan. I was working with the football program up there, and it was pouring rain, 2013. And I see this big lineman, hey, buddy, how you doing? And he knew me because I was a play-by-play football guy, and worked as the SID briefly. But I said, hey, man, what are you doing? He goes, I'm just waiting for the rain to die down. I said, hey, I'll give you a ride. I go, where do you live? And he's like, across the street. And he goes, oh, no, man, I can't do that. I'll get in trouble. I'm all, you live across the street and I can't give you a ride? But back then, which is not all that long ago, giving a kid a ride across the street to get him out of the rain would be a violation. I mean, the insanity of how things have changed.
No, that's what I meant.
Yeah, hey, Joe, hold on 2 seconds. Joe, hold on 2 seconds. We got to go to a quick break here. The station has these hard breaks. Okay, so
I understand.
I'm going to ask a trivia question. If you know the answer, don't say anything quite yet. Which luxury brand has a crocodile logo? All right.
Oh, that's easy. That's
an easy one. Okay. All right. Stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. Don't touch that dial. We are going to be right back with some even harder questions for Mike. Because he likes the hard ones. All right. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, along with Mike McDowd, our special guest, Joe Cravens. All right, Joe, let's see if you know the answer to this. Which luxury brand has a crocodile logo?
Now, is it a crocodile or an alligator? We got to be a little more specific.
I think this one, they call it a crocodile, but crocodiles I know have a thinner snout.
I've just got a bust here. I don't only have one answer, regardless what it is. I think it's Icon, but.
All right, let's see if Mike knows the answer.
It's Lacoste.
That's right. Very good.
Of course. The French, that was named after a French tennis player back in the day. Did you know that?
There you go. See? You know that.
Yeah, I know. Joe's riveted by that answer. I mean, listen, our special guest is Joe Cravens, a one-of-a-kind human being. I had the honor of working with him as he was a color analyst, and I was a play-by-play guy for the Big Sky basketball tournament. I think it was back, 2017, Joe, was it around then? We were in Reno, Nevada.
That's probably pretty close, Mike. They did that tournament a couple more times in Reno, and that's in Boise now, and I just got through doing it. But I think that's about right. It's been 7 or 8 years ago.
Well, it's important that I set the stage because I had never met Joe. I talked to him on the phone a few times, and so I said, Joe, we got to meet. We got to have a production meeting. He's like, well, come on up to my room, and Joe and I ended up studying meticulously all the players. We studied the video. And I think we might have imbibed in an adult beverage or two, as I recall. And that was my introduction to Joe and having probably the best production meeting I've ever had in my life.
Well,
did you do that study for one game?
We had to do like 9 games, I think.
We did 9 or 10 games, and then of course Joe. We do from the very beginning. Joe and I do all and Joe is fabulous. I mean, honestly, he is the best color analysis I've ever worked with. I've worked with some good guys, but America's missing out on this guy. I don't know why he's not on Fox or CBS, but this guy needs to be front and center. Joe, this show goes coast to coast, border to border. We're on Sirius XM, iHeartMedia, American Forces Network. So you are heard around the world. You deserve to be heard around the world because when it comes down to college basketball, you're a great coach. You've been everywhere. And not only that, this is what I love about you. I heard somebody recently compared you, and I think it's quite a compliment, to being like the Bill Walton of broadcasting. Now, that is a great compliment.
Well, let me back up for a minute, Mike, refresh your memory. If you and I were studying stats and doing a production meeting in my room, and if you're not sure whether we were having an adult beverage, let me guarantee you we were having adult beverages, because that's the only way I study those. I appreciate your kind words there. And in
Well,
terms
let me
of
ask you
the
about that. Would you guys be doing like a whole bunch of studying for just the one game, or would it
No,
be
we
for?
did like
well,
9
it's
games.
I mean, like
yeah.
every
See, I
game, you'd have to do a bunch of studying on each. I mean, because remember, there's
That was
different teams.
brutal.
Yeah, that is
Yeah,
pretty
I
brutal.
just got through doing my 10th straight Big Sky tournament. That's 9 games in 5 days. It's 4 straight days of doing 2 games, and
Wow.
then the championship game. And I probably put in 25 to 30 hours of preparation before I ever get there. And then once the tournament starts, it's probably another 10 hours worth of preparation. So, and that's to do it the right way. You know, in my
Yeah.
mind, I always tell people I always over prepare, and that's a lot of that's the old coach in me. And I only use probably 30 to 40% of the information I have, but you never know which 30 to 40% it's going to be. And
Well, yeah, especially some player comes off the bench who you're not familiar with, but you've been doing some prep on them, and you happen to know a lot of information about them, right?
yeah, and and if you think, oh, that kid will never get in the game, and all of a sudden he's in the game, I always, and I've had this conversation many times with people who ask about my preparation and all that. And when I make the statement, it's the old coach in me coming out. How many times I've done scouting reports and game preparations, and you think, well, I only saw that in out of bounds play one time in their last 4 games, so we won't go over that, and then kiss my country behind if they don't run it 2 times and score 2 baskets on you. So that's always in the back of my mind when I'm doing my prep, and again, I kind of beat myself up with things like that.
So what do you think about scouting? Do you think you'll maybe do some scouting if you haven't already?
Well, you mean NBA type scouting?
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty comfortable and very fortunate and very blessed. I did 35 games this year, and that's just about all I want to do. I'm at a point in life I'm really blessed to have a great lifestyle, which I'm doing as we speak, sitting poolside in California. And I broadcast and all winter, and that keeps me occupied. And in the summer, I play golf. I'm a big gardener and sit on the front deck and drink beer and listen to baseball with my buddies, and then start again in November. So I'm very satisfied with what I'm doing. I don't have enough time to do scouting for anyone, I don't think. And again, it's a great thing for me you take 30 years of coaching, 4 years of playing, and this was my 19th year of broadcasting. I've been involved, very fortunately, I've been involved in college basketball for 53 years now. I'd like to say I started when I was real young, but even if I started when I was real young, that makes you pretty damn old. So, but anyway, I'm pretty content doing some broadcasting and then having my summers and early falls off and just enjoying my life.
Hey, Joe, I think it's important to put it in perspective. Like I said, you were compared to one of the great passionate men of all time in college basketball, Bill Walton, and I think there's a reason for that. I love you're originally from you're from Indiana, but you're a you're a Cincinnati Reds fan. I'm just throwing this in, Big Red Machine, but I know we're going to talk about that. But your one-liners are getting legendary notice. Talk a little about some of the zingers you like to throw out there, because they're funny.
Well, it's really interesting, and I've had people, and I've been on shows much, exactly like this over the last few years, and I've been asked, well, do you keep a list of those things that you then throw in the game? And I always explain, I'm from Southern Indiana. I'm from a 2-stoplight town. Southern Indiana, meaning grew up 30 miles north of Louisville, Kentucky, and it's a very blue collar type area, and that's just part of the language there. You may for instance, some buddies of mine that I grew up with, and I still have lifelong friendships there that I stay in touch with, and they called me from the Moose Lodge a few years ago. Of course, a little later in the evening, and I said, "Boy, it's been hot back home, hadn't it?" And one of my buddies said, "Joe, it's been hotter than a fat kid's corduroys here." And I thought that was, and so I said that 2 or 3 times on the air, and people thought it was kind of funny until my daughter, who works in media relations with the Rockies, said, "Dad, you can't say that. You can't say, and I said, "Well, can I say a chubby kid's corduroys?" "No, you can't say that either." But people at home use those, and I use those every day. If you were with me on the golf course or sitting, watching a basketball game or something, those are just part of the vernacular from where I grew up. Now, I have become more conscious of when I say some of those things now, because people will bring them up. But again, it's much like coaching. You got to coach to who you are. And broadcasting's the same way. You got to broadcast to who you are. You can't emulate or try to simulate anyone else. Just be who you are.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Cincinnati, because my daughter just moved there, and I'm going to be visiting her at the end of May, and maybe checking out a Reds game.
Oh, it's a great ballpark, great American ballpark. My home, if you go down the Ohio River from Cincinnati to Louisville and then go hang a right, basically. I grew up 30 miles from there, right off Highway 65. So and I have a daughter working in professional baseball. She's with the Colorado Rockies, as I mentioned. But I listen to the Reds every game. I would rather listen to a game than I would watch it, and I think that's a product of growing up around there, where everyone had them on their AM radio, either in the car or sitting out on their porch, and you'd walk by and just say, just what's the score? Well, Reds are down 5-4, and you knew that's what they were doing, and so again, and that was the first back 1965. If you won the Little League championship in my hometown, you got to go. They took you to the Cincinnati Reds. They were playing in Old Crosley Field at that time. So my very first game was at Old Crosley Field with Frank Robinson and Vada Pinson and Big Klazewski at first base.
Ted Klazewski. With the cutoff on the arms. And they were playing the Giants, so I got to see Willie, and I think all 3 Alou brothers were on that Giants team. But that was my first game. Play the outfield, all of them. Hey guys, let's tell you what, really quickly, we're going to cut to another quick break here. All right, and again, if you know the answer, don't say anything quite yet. What color are the sunsets on Mars? What color are the There's only so many colors you can think of, right? What color are the sunsets on Mars? All right, that's our trivia question. Stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. One more time, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my co-host, Mike McDowd, and our special guest, Joe Cravens. Second trivia question, what color are the sunsets on Mars?
Joe?
Yellow.
No.
I'm going to go, it's caramely, nougaty, and delicious, and it's like a Mars almond bar. Is that the hell we're talking about? Because I don't even know.
And it's a normal color.
I know, but I'm being facetious, as you know what. So it's a nougat color. I have no idea.
No, blue. Isn't that weird?
Blue? Yeah, it is weird.
I thought that was too obvious. I didn't answer that because I thought it'd be too easy.
Well, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Edward.
No, I was going to say the next question is hard, just because you'd think it'd be an easy one, but it ain't.
But it ain't. I like it.
But it ain't. Yeah. And if you were watching the Reds in '65, Pete Rose had just been a rookie 2 years before.
Yeah, I just read a wonderful book a couple of years ago. His biography is really well written. I'm trying to think of the author, and I can't come up with it, but it was very insightful to why he was a great player and why he got in trouble with gambling. But of course, then, I was 11 years old then, so I didn't follow it quite as close until I got a little older and, got into the 70s, the era of the Big Red Machine and all of that. But, and then, they're very, very close to my heart. Then several years after that, I'm married. I take my daughter, who's now in professional baseball, to her very first baseball game, and that was at Great American Ballpark. She was 12 years old, and we walked in the park, and she looked up at me, and her face lit up like a little kid on Christmas. She said, "Dad, we ought to go to every major league park." I said, "All right, we'll try," and we accomplished that. It took us 17 years, but we went to every major league park. And so, again, I've been a Reds fan for a long time. As I sat here by the pool with my Cincinnati Reds hat on, and I just came from spring training. I saw 3 Reds games and 3 Rockies games, and then kept moving west. But no, I really enjoy baseball, and I think it's a great hobby, and I think it's just I love the history of the game. I read a lot of baseball books, and I think it's I think it's a hobby almost.
Sure, but you'll appreciate. Let me just add this one quick thing. So, Joe, you'll appreciate this. When I was 14 years old, my mom's great uncle came to visit us, and I'll make the long story short. He used to watch Honus Wagner play.
Oh my gosh! Oh my!
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, did you ever play baseball? Because I'm thinking
I did.
You have such a Were you pretty good? Did you get some love or?
This is a very typical Indiana story. I made the varsity baseball team as a 9th grader, and was probably at that time every bit as good, maybe better baseball than I was basketball. But I missed. Of course, we played all spring into early summer, and I missed being away from basketball. And I only played my 9th grade year and quit so I could just play basketball all the time. And when I say play, there was no leagues or anything. We went and you didn't even play in the gym. Once the season was over, you were relegated to playing on outdoor courts on asphalt. But I never gave up my passion for baseball. And sometimes I wish I would have continued to play. But I didn't. I quit after that. But I always, again, retained my love for the game.
How good a basketball player were you?
Well, I was good enough to play Division I, and that was about it. I used to have lunch with my old college coach. He at the Final Four every year, and he told me once, and he was a wonderful man. And I was, I was kind of the backup point guard most of the time. I think I started like the last 10 or 12 games of my career at Texas Arlington. But he said the only record you hold at UTA is most cheerleaders attempted. He said not completed, just attempted. So that gives you a little indication about my career. But I was from Indiana, which meant I could shoot a little bit. I tell people, if you grow up in Indiana and you can't shoot by the time you're 14, they make you move to Kentucky.
Hey, Joe, two quick questions, and you can just say yes or no. But being a Reds fan, I mean, and I don't know why I'm asking about this. We're supposed to be talking about basketball, but Pete Rose not being in the Hall of Fame, is it about time? I mean, come on now.
Yeah, I didn't have a real strong opinion about that one way or the other, but it's time now. For what's going on now with online betting and it's time now to say, okay, that's way under the bridge. The guy
there's no arguing that he was one of the best players ever.
The all-time hit game. You look at what he did
in the Hall of Fame who are of questionable characters themselves.
Yeah.
Maybe they just didn't get caught at doing stuff. I also saw something on the airplane. There was a 5-part but documentary. It was really good. So if you ever get a chance to see that one on Pete Rose, because he just died last year, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Within the last year, he just died.
Yeah.
Our special guest. Go ahead, Joe. Our special guest is Joe Cravens. Joe, I gotta ask you. My friend, the beauty of the NCAA tournament, March Madness, there's nothing like it. I think what made it so fun and I know you're going to probably connect to this, but when you got teams like UC San Diego, the mighty Titans of La Jolla, their first year ever available for availability in the tournament, they make the tournament and they go toe to toe with a powerhouse like Michigan. Isn't that what the tournament is all about? And teams like Drake who get the one win and then they're done. I mean, I'm sure you relate to all this.
No, I think that's what's so wonderful about March Madness. And remember, growing up in Indiana, before they went to class basketball, we had that every year. The Hoosier story, and some underdog making it all the way to the Final Four in Hinkle Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. And so I grew up with that type of underdog mentality around Indiana basketball. So I think it's a wonderful thing, March Madness is. And I went to my very first Final Four as an assistant coach in 1977 in Atlanta, and that was the year Marquette won it with Al McGuire. And the first 4 or 5 I went to, but I remember very vividly that game. That was just a bunch of coaches there. I mean, it wasn't the fan fest type thing that it is today. It was just, a bunch of college coaches went because that was their national convention. And to what it's grown into now is just incredible.
Well, you got it, and the players, how much more athletic they are.
Well, the size of them. Back you look at rosters back in the in the mid '70s, and teams had a couple guys 6'8", 3 or 4 guys 6'6", 6'7".
Yeah.
I mean, just the size. Excuse me, that's changed is really, really interesting to me. Again, that was considered a 6'8" guy was a big guy back in the mid '70s.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, is it going to continue to be the same old guard? We talked about the Akrons, the VCUs, the St. Mary's College Fighting Gales. I mean, look, those teams are so exciting to watch. You were head coach at Weber State for 7 years. When is one of the little guys going to win this thing? Because right now, if you look at the tournament, you got Auburn and Michigan. You got Ole Miss, Michigan State. I'm just running this down. BYU, Bama, Duke, Arizona. I mean, it's kind of the same old teams in many respects. When are one of the mid majors or small colleges going to win the actual tournament? Is that even possible?
Well, I think going back, remember Butler was in the final game against Duke. I don't know how long ago that's been. Probably George Mason. VCU actually made it to the Final Four several years ago. So that there's guys. The little guys are getting close, getting to the Final Four. Now, will one day win the whole shooting match? I don't know. I still am a believer of the great equalizer, the 3-point line. If someone gets hot, which many of them have, to get to stage upsets, the 15-2 upsets, and get to the Final Four. But anytime you get that 3-point line out there, I think you got a chance. And speaking of the 3-point line, it's very interesting to me nowadays. I think the 3-point line came in 1985. There's an awful lot of college. Think about this: an awful lot of college basketball fans out there who has never seen a game played without a 3-point line or a 30-second shot clock. So, the way it has evolved over the years. But I don't know if that'll ever happen, Mike, a mid-major win at all. But, there's been some that get awful close in the last couple of decades.
Well, in this particular tournament, I mean, you got your classics, you got your Dukes, you got your Arizonas, as I mentioned, Auburn, Michigan. You got Houston's in there, Michigan State, kind of your blue bloods. Who else we got? Kentucky, Tennessee. I mean,
well, think about it. If you're a player,
gosh,
you want to play for a team. You want to play for Duke. It's one thing to be a big fish in a small pond, but because it's not an individual sport, you're not going to go anywhere. So if you're really good, you're going to want to go to Duke or Arizona or Kentucky, right?
Well, and now it's back. I agree with everything you're saying, but also now with NIL and the money
Yeah.
they're paying out to guys, that may be creating a gap that's insurmountable for the small
Yeah.
guys because, there's guys making, the rumor that BYU paid the nation's number one recruit $7 million to come there for a year, and people say, "Oh, that's overstated." But let's call the under of that $5 million. Now, who's going to compete with that? And that's what it's gotten down to. So I don't know. I think players deserve to be made to make money, but I think it's way out of whack right now.
Who do you like winning this whole thing? Do you have any ideas?
Well, I think, any of the top, 1, 2 seeds, maybe 3 seeds can win it. But I think Houston has a great chance. I think that the difference between their team and past Kelvin Sampson teams there is they've got guys that can shoot it. They've always played so hard and rebounded so well offensively, especially. But it used to be their best offense was to throw it up there and then go fetch it. They were such great offensive rebounders because they were such awful shooters. He's got guys that can shoot it now.
You got to go back to Ralph Sampson and Hakeem Olajuwon for the big ones there. Hey, guys,
exactly.
We're going to go to our last trivia question here. All right, ready?
Okay.
What is the cheapest grocery store chain in the U.S.? I didn't get this one.
The
All right?
cheapest?
What is it's considered the cheapest grocery, the least expensive grocery store chain in the U.S.? I guess what they mean is, to buy stuff there. It's, if you go to Nordstrom's, obviously that ain't it because that's an expensive place, right? Okay. All right, stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. Don't touch that dial because we are going to be right back with some closing comments. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mike McDowd and our special guest, Joe Cravens. Third trivia question: what is the cheapest grocery store chain in the U.S.? Anyone? Go ahead, Mike.
Grocery outlet?
Yeah, which one? Go ahead.
Grocery outlet? No.
One called Aldi, A-L-D-I? I never heard of it.
Oh, I know they are. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the cheapest one. All right. But Mike, go ahead and ask your last question for Coach.
Well, all season long, I've been complaining about basketball in the West, on the West Coast, and the western part of the United States. It seems like a power play has shifted to the East and to the South. The SEC is a powerhouse now. What has happened to basketball in the West? If you looked at the top 25, Joe, there was like one team in the top 10 all season long. It was a joke.
Yeah, that is a real head scratcher, Mike. I think it may have to do with just the population of out west compared to down south and the East Coast and availability of players. You just don't see – it isn't like the quality players are leaving the West Coast to go to East or go to Southeast. The quality of players that are on those SEC teams are all from SEC-type areas. And you look at UCLA and Cal and Stanford, those are all California kids. So I think it's just proximity now of talent. And I don't know I think it's very hard for a California school to go to, say, Louisiana and convince a kid from Louisiana to come to California these days. And
all right.
And I don't know if that's right or not, but that's my 2 cents worth.
Joe Craven,
Joe.
Thank you very much for all your insight. All right, here's our thoughts of the day. So I bought a new deodorant stick today, and the instructions said remove cap and push up bottom. Now I can barely walk, but when I pass gas, the room smells lovely. I thought you'd like that one, Joe. And,
I'm going to steal that and not give you credit. How's that?
Okay, that's okay with me. All right. And I was going to tell you guys about a time traveling joke, but you didn't like it. All right, tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and asking more trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Joe.
So long.
Thanks, guys. That was fun. I've